What's going, guys? Aarava here. Welcome back to the Pitlane podcast, episode number 26 today, to review the Singapore Grand Prix. Back with the usual host, myself, Tom, and Callum, unfortunately, is again missing the podcast again for like the 5 millionth time.
I don't think we can class Cal as a usual host anymore. He's now a guest. He's a guest on this podcast.
I'll still say usual. But anyway, we're back for the review of the Singapore Grand Prix. A really tasty one, actually. You know, a lot of nice moves. We're talking just before we start the podcast. Tom, saying that there were some really nice overtakes, some nice little scraps between multiple cars. And then also we had the kind of hype of Ricciardo maybe coming back at Rosberg. Obviously ended a bit anticlimactically, but it was still, I feel like all of us on Twitter at least, all of us enjoyed it, even if it didn't kind of end up in something. All of us still had some enjoyment out of watching Ricciardo push so hard and maybe catch Rosberg at the end. So I'll go through the results, and I think we'll just take it team by team, probably easiest way. But Nico Rosberg won the race, obviously. Ricciardo in second place. Hamilton third, bit of a weird Grand Prix for him. Raikkonen fourth. Vettel, fantastic turnaround to get fifth from what was last on the grid, obviously with multiple changes to his car as well after a very poor qualifying. Verstappen sixth. Alonso in seventh place, probably disappointing for them. Perez in eighth. Kvyat, nice to get in ninth place, considering what Toro Rosso's car has been like previously, and also we'll talk more about Kvyat's race later on. And Magnussen getting Renault's first points, I believe, since Russia. So very, very good race for him. So that's the top 10. But let's go team by team. So Mercedes, Tom, do you want to kind of start us off on?
Yeah, well, Mercedes, straight from the get-go, I think it was lap 8 when we started to get the first radio messages that Mercedes were already trying to manage their brakes, and that seemed to be the pattern of their race. Obviously, it's still a mystery as to why last year they didn't perform at all. And you can see this year, if Hamilton really wasn't on it all weekend whatsoever. You could see qualifying Rosberg just stole the show. I mean, I don't rate Rosberg that much, but he put Hamilton to shame this weekend. Like, he was much faster than Lewis. And you can see that if Rosberg wasn't on form this weekend, it could have easily been a repeat of last year where Mercedes just didn't have the pace to win. Rosberg was just so on it this weekend. He did such a good job just managing the car today, and overall a great performance. That sort of like that performance there from Rosberg just over the whole weekend has sort of maybe just gained like an ounce of respect for him. A really good drive. Hamilton was nowhere all weekend, but overall Mercedes, I was watching Spanish commentary today, and they were saying like Pedro de la Rosa is one of the commentators on there, and they were saying like, a world champion team like Mercedes, why couldn't they invest in possibly having just a bit larger brake size? It's a little bit more weight, but they can afford the deficit for the sake of brake overheating. Why do they have to run it so marginal all the time? When they've got enough in the tank to give themselves a bit of, breathing space. But it's an interesting race today. I quite enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah, no, it was for like different aspects, like not just the race. Tactically, it was also quite interesting because obviously we had effectively like teams all scaring themselves into an extra pit stop, apart from Rosberg at the end. Obviously, Rosberg was very close to considering making a third pit stop there, but they decided against it. But Hamilton sort of started the chain off with Raikkonen as well, trying to get him. And it was, I think you said it on Twitter as well, everyone was saying it was very, very weird and interesting to see that Mercedes trying to help Hamilton out, jump Raikkonen, really hindered Rosberg a lot because it triggered all the pit stops. But yeah, agreed. Very, very interesting race. And Rosberg, just looked comfortable all weekend. Honestly. Hamilton, you could see from free practice, despite obviously Rosberg had that crash in free practice, but after that, then Hamilton just never looked as comfy. He had a very poor FP3. And then in qualifying, come across the line, 7/10 down. Yeah, it's just not what you want. So,
if you look at it, Hamilton pit before Rosberg at all times during this race. It wasn't the usual Mercedes strategy of pit the first driver first. Could you imagine, especially that last pit stop drama, like that last phase where they pit Hamilton out of nowhere to, then that sort of triggered a chain reaction and Rosberg looked like he completely messed it up. Could you imagine if that was roles reversed and all the Hamilton fans going mad on Twitter about that? Honestly, could you imagine? Twitter would have been just toxic. It's just, it's one of them ones. And I think it's just, credit to Rosberg. Again, like I said, he managed it perfectly. I think one more lap and it could have been a different story, but he did really well. Really well.
There was this point. There were a few questionable moments for Mercedes in terms of their strategy yet again. I guess, we sort of say it like we're complaining about it, but I guess it's sort of a good thing for neutrals out there that are not like Merc fans.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good for me.
Yeah, sometimes their strategies are just a bit like questionable, but like you said, Rosberg made it work, and thankfully for him and his side of the garage, they both kind of I think it must have been Rosberg's initial decision not to pit straight away because they were ready for him, and he continued on. Then I'm guessing he probably had a conversation quickly with his engineer, just saying let's just go to the end, and good decision from both him and the garage for that. But Hamilton, I think just a case of sometimes you get that for different drivers, like different drivers just don't get in a rhythm for the entire weekend, and you're just thrown off. And I think Hamilton's one of those cases, really, and it was very odd to see, actually, very, very odd and quite refreshing. Talking about the rest of the podium, Ricciardo and Red Bull, different stories for him and Verstappen. Ricciardo's race was basically essentially trying their best to get ahead of Rosberg in any way they could, and they tried it with the 3-stop. Ricciardo was absolutely on fire, 3.6 seconds gained in one lap, and I think it was just about 7 over 2. And it was a crazy, crazy amount of pace that him and Red Bull showed. Just wasn't enough. I think, what was the gap? Let me look at the specific gap was...
It was like 7 tenths, 6 tenths.
0.488 across the line. Obviously, wow. Rosberg, by like the last lap, I feel like he maybe just cruised a little bit, made sure his brakes didn't fail right at the end. But still, like, it was 2 seconds by 3 laps to go. It was so, so close. And, top marks to Red Bull for trying something. I think Ricciardo also said it himself on the radio. He said, like, at least we enjoyed it, just pushing as hard as we could at the last stint. So, exciting race for Ricciardo. Another podium, consistency. I think he'll be happy with it. I think it was in Germany when, for me, his mentality sort of shifted. And it seemed like he was genuinely just really, really happy to be on the podium because it was very obvious from then that Mercedes have this pace over everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can see, you sort of had a bit of a slump, didn't he, in the mid-season after, I think it was Spain and Monaco, where he sort of like doubted himself a bit, but he's really back to his best now. He's gone from strength to strength, and I think it's just worth pointing out, Mercedes won the race today. They've won every race this season except for Spain. What races? I think they've won the races that are left, with the exception of the next one in Malaysia. They won all the other ones last year. Could we see a clean sweep from now to the end of the season? We was discussing this in the last podcast about possible record for Mercedes to win 20 out of 21 races.
Wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. Really wouldn't be that surprised.
It could happen.
Wouldn't be that surprised.
But overall, yeah, it was great fun. I really enjoyed the Ricciardo chase, so to speak. It just, even though I honestly believed he was going to catch him. I thought he did. That one lap where he basically didn't gain anything because he had to pass Bottas and Gutierrez on the same lap.
Yeah.
So unlap him, sorry. I thought that just made a difference. I thought, that maybe that last lap we could have had DRS, and you could see that Red Bull, a lot of grunt in the straight line when you saw, I think it was Verstappen fly past Kvyat, I think it was, when he gave it the 4 beans down the straight. So the Red Bull really did perform well today. Speaking of Verstappen, interesting race for him. I mean, he just lost it at the start, didn't he?
Yeah, it started slow, yeah. Poor guy.
How did he not get collected by Hulkenberg? Yeah. Did you see that? He literally just came right in front of him like this. Yeah. He just completely missed him.
Poor getaway, and then that was it. Just seeing a nearly T-boning the Force India there. But then, he got held up by Kvyat, which everyone really loved on Twitter. The
battle was brilliant. Great battle.
Yeah. Because it was also just, I think someone tweeted both of us, me and you, Tom, specifically, they were saying it's not just a nice little scrap because they're scrapping. It's because it felt a little personal because of that whole demotion, promotion. It just had that extra edge to it of okay, it might be a little bit personal for them inside their helmet. Good scrap, and then eventually, what was it? Around the second last corner. Yeah, second and third last. That little last chicane before the final corner. Verstappen making that move. Really, really nice. And I think it was Brundle saying just finding a piece of tarmac that you didn't think was there to make the overtake. Nice little move there. But yeah, really good scrapping after, and to get back to 6th after what looked like might have been worse if he kept on going badly in the first stint. So all in all, he might be a little bit dejected about just being 6th behind Vettel, especially, who started last. But taking circumstances into account, still solid comeback, I guess.
It wasn't even... I think it was a quiet race for Verstappen. I think he'd be very disappointed with that. The fact that they almost got beaten by McLaren Honda on raw pace, because Alonso started behind him, Verstappen started 4th, Alonso started 9th, and he almost finished ahead of him. A quiet race. I know it's a street circuit and it's hard to overtake, but I mean, look at Vettel. The Red Bull is technically the Red Bull in theory is a bit of a better car than the Ferrari around this sort of track. So, I think especially looking at Ricciardo's pace, you got to think he could have done more there. But definitely Verstappen's gone very cold the last few races. Ever since he started to get a bit more aggressive with his defending, it's almost like he's just sort of lost that edge and that concentration level that's made him much quicker in the past. And you can see Ricciardo now is really sort of giving him a bit of a beating. He out-qualifies him all the time and he's now out-racing him as well. So, I'm not saying anything, but, just hashtag bring back Fiat. Maybe.
At Toro Rosso, announce Fiat. So we mentioned briefly Vettel, so let's move on to Ferrari. So, Raikkonen finally woke up a little bit in this race, made a nice move on Hamilton when he was going a little bit slower. Looked like for a brief period in the race that Ferrari have potentially got a surprise podium here on our hands. Then unfortunately the Mercedes just turned their thinking heads on a little bit, got Lewis the undercut, and then Kimi. Well, it was the commentator was obviously you're watching Spanish TV, so it's a little bit different for me. But Brundle and Crofty were debating what does Kimi do? Do they keep him out and maybe try go to the end, or if they know that he's going to get undercut, so they have to act fast. And it was a case of they left it a little bit too late to make the decision almost to bring him in.
On Spanish TV, they were saying he got baited. It was a panic decision. It was rash. It was like they didn't have to respond. There was a 27-second gap. But if you look at the pace, look at Ricciardo's pace, you think, was it the right thing? It would have been close. However you cut it, because if Ricciardo co-opted to Rosberg and he was 5 seconds behind, Hamilton was 5 seconds behind Raikkonen when he pit. So it would have been very close. Yeah. So it's one of them ones where I think it was worth the gamble, but I definitely agree with the Spanish commentary. I think they panicked a bit. I thought Raikkonen had good pace. You could see he was pulling away from Hamilton on those soft tyres once he got past him and they did their final pit stops. Well, what we thought were their final pit stops. And they went onto the soft. So you could see that he was pulling away. He was like 6 seconds clear of Hamilton. And then Mercedes obviously rolled the dice one last time. But I was impressed with Ferrari. Raikkonen's been good the last few races. Ever since he's got married, he's been good the last 2 or 3 races. He's been on the pace. He's been consistent. And if he's consistent like that, and then Vettel has a bit of luck and doesn't have any issues, then, if they're consistently getting points, and that's the best thing for them. But Raikkonen definitely put on a good show today. I was quite impressed with him. And also Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, great.
One of the drives of the season.
Fantastic turnaround.
I said on Twitter, even though there was a safety car this race, they were forced through the pit lane. So there wasn't any really major gain. I think he only overtook Valtteri Bottas. That was the only place he gained in the safety car phase. So he went from 21st or 20th if you include Romain Grosjean not starting the race. He went from 20th to 5th on track with just strategy and raw pace. And you can see, especially on that ultra soft, he was quick.
Yeah,
those last few stints, he was fast. Wasn't it? Yeah, he made those last a good 20 laps each. So he did really well to find a nice balance with the pace and also manage the tyre. So great race on Vettel. Definitely my driver of the day for me, but like I said, still Rosberg, very close second. Those two really just, really impressed me. But Vettel, great drive. Really good to see. Especially after what happened yesterday.
Yeah, especially after how he felt on Saturday. Like he was saying that, Raikkonen's been the faster car. So he even admitted that he wasn't there up till the race in Singapore. Kimi definitely had the consistency over him in practice and stuff like that. So, and he felt so dejected after qualifying. So yeah, agreed. Just great turnaround, great turnaround. Mentally quite strong as well, showing why perhaps he's a 4-time world champion. You gotta keep your head down, keep going, and he's turned it around. So moving down the order, I guess the next team, McLaren just by numbers. Alonso being 7th place. Obviously, probably as a whole on the weekend, a little bit disappointing for McLaren. They thought they would be better here. I thought they'd be better here as well, but I guess also I think teams like Ferrari just pull through a bit more than they thought so. And then obviously at the very start with Hulkenberg, Jenson lost half his front wing. That didn't help him out. Alonso got a pretty okay start. Got up to
he got a great start.
Then with the safety car, he got up into 5th. Yeah.
He had a brilliant start from 9th on the grid. He had a fantastic start.
Yeah, safety car helped out with the yellow flags, got up to 5th. But 7th place.
It's a good result. I think you seem quite down. I think it's a great result. Best of the rest.
Funnily enough, that is the literal staple result I kept getting in my career mode. So, P7, just on the mark.
So to you, it just feels like another race of,
it's on the mark.
Again.
Well,
it's
I
good though.
I can't be disappointed. P7's a solid result, but it's like you always want a little bit more. You always want to see a bit of an upward curve. So, probably not as much as we're expecting, but yeah, as you said, best of the rest. So, and
it's good
Alonso
to see him bounce back after the last couple of races.
And yeah, Alonso did, great drive. He tried his best to hold up the likes of Toro Rosso, Red Bull here and there. Obviously, just at the end of the day, eventually, they got him on the straight or down to the brake zone. But
I do want to say, I was talking to my dad about this. I am a firm believer of the McLaren project now. They seem like empty words at the start of last season and during last season. But they've said they're working on next year's car and they're going to continue to develop this year's car until the very last race. Yeah. I can honestly see them fighting for a podium on a good day around, what's to say they couldn't have a chance maybe Interlagos or something. I think on a good day, they could definitely challenge for the top 6, the 3 big teams, if they really
I think what puts
it perfect for them.
Perspective is if you think about this race or, just any of the better races they've had this season, and you compare it to Australia 2015, where it was just a shambles. It was just so bad. It's just a huge turnaround after over a year and a half. So yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful about it. Yeah, they're still doing solid work, and it's really good to hear that they're going to develop both this year and next year.
Well, I'm sure regarding whether Jenson comes back or not in 2018, for you as a fan, it's good to hear that they'll keep developing this car until the last race. Because it gives you the best possible opportunity of seeing JB get a result.
Yeah, it's not like a drop-off thing. Moving on to Force India, Sergio Perez in 8th place. Obviously, Hulkenberg had his little incident sandwiched by the Toro Rossos, it was, and then just straight into the wall. Safety car out. Really unfortunate for him. Perez, 8th place, though. Pretty good, I would say. Pretty good, I think. I can't remember.
Good race, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't there wasn't much going on for Perez in terms of manic scraps or moves, but just a solid race. Just a solid race for him. And then Kvyat obviously had a little scrap with Verstappen, which everyone kind of enjoyed on Twitter, and then just a good turnaround for both Toro Rosso guys. Unfortunate, Carlos Sainz dropped off eventually because he had that also issue with his it was the side plate bit of his car flapping off, and he got the black and orange flag for the FIA. I thought it was unsafe, but it was kind of I was actually surprised, to be honest. I was surprised that Toro Rosso leaped so much from where they were in Italy. Obviously, it's a very different circuit, but still, didn't think they would even maybe have the downforce for it. But very good turnaround, back in the points for Kvyat. I think Kvyat needed that race just to show he was still got life in him, still got a bit of punchiness about him.
I don't know what they were saying on English commentary, but that race there, when he was battling Verstappen,
yeah,
they were giving it the big one and just giving the impression he was defending as a man who knows he hasn't got a seat in the Red Bull Driver Academy anymore. And he's driving as a person who's fighting for a seat. And that seemed to be the case. I mean, I understand you want to fight fairly, but you never see... I don't think you would ever see the Red Bull Toro Rosso fight that hard. Yeah. That one where I think it was turn 14, where Verstappen's on the outside and Kvyat's on the inside. And it was so close to the wall. He gave him just enough room to get through. Yeah. It was a great battle, but to me, it also came across as a guy who is looking for a seat next year, not necessarily someone who's trying to prove themselves to Toro Rosso anymore.
Yeah. I think the English commentary had the same sort of gist about it. He's got something to prove. He's just he's doing it for himself, and the fact that it is with Verstappen, it's also kind of awkward in that way as well. So it was very much like that same sort of vibe with it, and I guess that's we see that a lot sometimes. We've seen it with Kimi, maybe when he signs a contract and gets married and stuff. Some things off track, or just when circumstances happen, sometimes it just ends up affecting them in actually quite a big way, and like
Yeah.
the way they the way they approach a Grand Prix or a race. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to the final place, Kevin Magnussen, Renault. Not much to say because it was a quiet race for him, but just they had the strategy worked out.
He did it in the first. I think he started on super softs in the first stint, and he basically just went on those in the first stint. He just, just ran it long, and he was up to like 7th at one point. He had some decent, consistent pace on the super softs, and he just kept on going with it. Do you know what I mean? And then eventually he came in, and he was doing his own race, but great result. And you got to think that's really putting pressure on Jolyon Palmer now, big time.
Yeah, especially after Palmer was like, I can prove myself at this race.
Palmer's seriously under pressure this race. Oh, sorry, the rest of the season now.
Yeah, the rest of the season.
But great result from K-Mag, and he technically hasn't got a seat at Renault secured for next year, so he's also proving himself.
I think
he's the only person who's got points for them this season, so I think he'll probably stay.
Something Sky was saying was he needs to maybe he's unproven as a team leader. If they were to bring in Ocon as like a young like a noob to F1, in terms of he's just come in this half season. If they bring him over to Renault, they were saying that Kevin, that it's a little unsure if he's a team leader sort of person. But results like these, getting 10th here for the team, while Palmer's down in 15th, 1 lap down. Like obviously Kevin was quite near to 1 lap down, but down in 15th compared to 10th, he's showing like he's got the stuff to maybe be the one to thrust them forward a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking now. I was just sort of reading on Twitter a little bit, and Smooth Racing, Josh. Yeah. He just tweeted to Crofty. When Crofty does his usual segment after the race, Ask Crofty, and he's just saying, as Ocon done enough in 3 races to prove that he deserves the full works Renault seat, and it gets you thinking. I know Verline's been there all season, but he hasn't really been anything special so far, really. So it's one of them ones where if he doesn't impress from now to the end of the season, why should he get the seat? It could be someone else. So I think there's a lot going around for that Renault seat at the moment. I think you've got to keep an eye on that. There's a lot of possibilities there. If Ocon, he's never out qualified or out raced or out practiced Verline, so to speak. He hasn't beaten any session, I don't think. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I understand Verline's been all season, he's very dialed into the car, but even still, Haryanto could out qualify him every now and again. So keep an eye on that. That could be an interesting one. Just that tweet has just sort of got me thinking.
It's definitely not like a thing that's like, oh, this is definitely going to happen. It's very up in the air, very very up in the air. So going down to out of the points, other teams. Haas, quiet race for them, very very quiet race. Obviously Roman didn't even start the race, and he was watching the Grand Prix in the garage. Gutierrez 11th. It's actually quite funny that they keep getting 11th. Like it was like a sort of a joke with who is it? Gunter, I think it is.
Yeah.
Like earlier on in the season, but literally they are just getting 11th every single time. And then for Williams, Massa in 12th place, and then Bottas retiring. Obviously, I didn't think they were going to be very strong anyway this weekend. It's one of those like it's a downforce dependent track. Williams never been known for downforce really.
Williams really strong though anymore? It's just one of them ones, like, they're just there. I don't know. I look at Williams and I think
their car's just really uninspiring.
Exactly.
I really hope, getting off topic a little bit, I really hope they change the livery next season. Please, dear God, change the look of your car with the aero, do something exciting, and change the livery. Please, your car is so uninspiring. Like, even if it was a fast car, it would still be a boring looking car.
It needs more of that martini colour to it. I mean, you've got the good colour choice there, you might as well use it. But,
yeah, overall, they're just there. They were never going to be that strong.
I think
race.
That's all like the team's car. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the battles. I mean, the Verstappen-Kvyat was a great battle. I really enjoyed that one. That was sort of like, it felt personal.
Yeah.
And the defending was like borderline good enough. And the thing is, that's sort of a taste of Verstappen's own medicine, the way he's been defending the last few races. So, I think that's even Stevens. Also, Vettel getting past Gutierrez and
nice little
Sainz, I want to say.
Nice little
that sort of 3-car battle. Yeah, that was really good to see.
It was like,
and also, gone.
It was like when he swung back, and it was what was it? I think it was Sainz who went wide, and
he almost was his front wing, didn't he?
Yeah, he
from
went
the
wide,
angle.
and then Vettel literally it was like he had like glorious traction, tight on the apex, and just swooped round past both of them.
It's brilliant. It's something out of F1, like the actual game itself, where
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
get some great
exactly.
traction.
Yeah, it was really good.
Also, the constant sort of battle with Alonso, Sainz, Kvyat, and Verstappen, and then later on in the race when it was what was the other three car? I think it was Perez, Verstappen, and Gutierrez. Those three. Like, there's like nice little 3-car battles all across the race. It was good to see, And overall, I think it's one of the better Singapore Grand Prix I remember. Last year was a really shit race. I know Vettel won, but it's only 11 overtakes. It's the least we've had, I think, ever.
Yeah, it was very,
in a long time.
Yeah.
So that was definitely one of the better Singapore races, I think, in a long time, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
So overall,
I
race,
remember
I
it was
enjoyed
I remember that scrap. I remember the scrap you just mentioned at the end there because it was Verstappen overtook Fiat, and then immediately Perez was so opportunistic and went down the inside of the final corner to get him, and ended up like ahead of him even before the corner finished. So, some really nice scraps out there. Definitely a lot better than last year's one. Like even though, as he said, Vettel won last year's race, still, it was a. I think also a lot was perhaps due with the tyres potentially. I think just the strategy nature of some of the guys, and also, I don't know, just the field seemed a little bit more able to overtake in places.
Yeah, the 3-tyre rule once again working its magic.
Yeah, it definitely is one of the. I think as a whole on the season, one of the best rule changes they've brought in for the 3-tyre compounds.
I'd even say go an extra yard and make them all available for every race weekend.
I'm not gonna lie. When they mentioned that rule change before, like what was it, like a year ago or something, when they were like talking about it, I really thought that it was going to be like that, and I was really excited for that because I thought it could work out as well because you could have like a slower team bringing like the absolute hardest tires and just doing a 1-stop, or like if they allowed it, do a 0-stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Like so it's got potential maybe if they're bold enough to maybe open it up in the future. But apart from that, Toro Rosso we talked about briefly there. Sauber, Nasser 13th place, Ericsson 17th. And then you got Manor in 16th with Verline, and then Ocon in 18th place. It says here Verline 1 lap down and Ocon 2 laps down, but I'm not too sure how big of the gap that was. But again, Verline obviously is going to be comfortable in the car, but again, outpacing Ocon there. Nasser, as usual, usually outpaces Ericsson. Quiet race for both of them. Standard stuff,
Verline
really.
always getting ahead of one of the Saubers, though. Always, now, consistently.
No. Yeah. Verline he does the job. He like getting ahead of a Sauber. It may not sound much, but for a team that was so used to just trundling around the back, like 1-2 at the back.
A quick mention on Manor. A team to watch out for next year in terms of going into solid midfield. Obviously, they said they want to push midfield, like to be in a midfield team for like the next 2 or 3 years. I read this week, I don't know if you saw, I think you might have seen it, but they started working on next year's car back in January.
Oh yeah, no, I think you mentioned this to me last week. Yeah,
it's like the same. It's almost like because the car that they're running now, that was meant to be their B spec car that they were set to introduce last season, but they decided to push it back.
Yeah.
So they've essentially had so much time to develop both cars. So this one's, they've got a point. It's done the job. They've got points this season.
Yeah.
And they've already developed next year's car in January, so you'd expect maybe Man to maybe take another step forward
basically
next
what they
year.
did was they clicked Cease R&D on the first race.
Yeah, basically in pre-season, they basically clicked Cease R&D after Abu Dhabi from the season before.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Next season we don't do any R&D whatsoever. We ain't got the money for that. We'll just forget about it. We'll do it next year.
Get the point. Get the point.
And
with
obviously,
last year's car.
It's interesting because you got to think the 3 teams at the back. Manor are going for their really early car development, which should help them in theory get higher up the grid. I think they've signed a really good. I don't know what department he works with, but they've signed someone who's really good at whatever he does, who's really highly respected in the paddock apparently in this past week. Sauber, with their new financial deal, you'd think they will probably take a jump forward next year because they've got money to spend. And they said they're going to sign drivers this week. They said they're going to sign drivers based on pace, not off paid driving. Right. So we'll see how that pans out. And obviously Renault. You expect them to take a huge leap forward. So hopefully, 3 sort of back markers, in theory, next year, if the grid stays somewhat similar, it should get a bit closer, hopefully. So it's a good time. It's a good time for F1.
Interesting times. But yeah, that was a enjoyable race to watch. Actually, everyone was very, very gloomy about what the race was going to be like, but it ended up being quite a nice one to watch. Some nice scraps. A lot of hype for Ricciardo when he was trying to catch Rosberg, and all round, pretty enjoyable Singapore Grand Prix. Definitely a lot better than last year's, and Yeah, enjoyable race weekend. Let us know what you guys thought about all that. Tom, have you got a last point?
No, just overall great race. Like I said, I've really enjoyed it, and I think if you look at the average, I think the good races in 2016 are still just about edging ahead of the bad ones this year. So overall, it's been a great season so far. I'm enjoying it, and I've got to say, this race has sort of just made me realise: could Rosberg win the World Championship? Open question. We'll see what happens.
Let us know what you guys think in the comments below.
Even I'm not the biggest believer in Rosberg, but even this race, I was like over the whole weekend, I was watching. I'm thinking to myself, well,
hold on here. Hold on.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, I think me and Tom, I think even Callum as well. Obviously, Callum supports Hamilton, so I think he would agree with both of us. I think all three of us have said the entire time, despite what's happened, 4 wins a row here and there, blah blah. I think we've all felt underlying still that Hamilton will get the championship. I'm still sticking with that. But I think it will be closer than I initially thought. I still think Hamilton will come back. I think this one was a very weird blip for him. But I really do like the fact that it looks like it's going to be a lot closer than I thought. I really thought it would have been a quite boring end to the season in terms of the points. But it's looking very, very close. So it's all in Hamilton's park now at Malaysia to see if he can make a response. But let us know what you thought about all that in the comments below, guys. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought. If you're new around here, then subscribe to this channel for the podcast. Follow us over on Twitter above our faces. And we'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Goodbye.